Okay, get ready to dive into the fascinating world of love.
It's going to be interesting to really unpack not just the what, but the why behind these seemingly simple yet often elusive principles.
Right, like we all want love, but what does it actually take to build it?
This research seems to suggest it's not all just about luck and chance encounters.
What I found really interesting is this idea that similarity plays a much bigger role than we might think. It almost sounds like the whole opposites attract thing is.
Well,
A bit of a misconception.
Yeah, the text actually talks about how early attraction often comes down to finding someone who's playing a similar tune, so to speak.
does that ring true for you?
It absolutely does.
Think of it like this. Our minds naturally gravitate towards what's familiar.
This plays out on a cultural level as well.
There's a Chinese saying, too, which refers to the beautiful harmony created when a lute and zither are played together.
It's a metaphor for the ideal state of marital bliss, two individuals resonating in sync.
Wow, I love that. And it makes sense, right?
Like that feeling of love at first sight. It's almost like recognizing a part of yourself in another person.
But here's the kicker. This research suggests we're not just passive players waiting for that lightning strike.
We can actually create opportunities for similarity to blossom.
Exactly. It's not about changing who you are, but rather being open to exploring those shared interests and values.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Tell me more about creating those connections.
Well, the text breaks down similarity into three key levels. The first, and perhaps most obvious, is shared interests.
These are the common hobbies, similar tastes, or shared passions that draw people together initially.
Think about those couples who bond over their love for indie music, or perhaps their mutual obsession with obscure documentaries about, I don't know, the migratory patterns of Canadian geese.
Okay, I'm picturing them now, binoculars in hand, but you're right, it's those shared experiences that create those initial sparks.
Precisely. Then it goes a layer deeper with aligned values. And this is where things get really interesting.
Remember that story from the text about Lucia and the injured dog?
It wasn't just about both liking dogs. It revealed a shared sense of compassion, a willingness to go the extra mile that resonated deeply with both of them.
Yeah, and isn't that what we all crave in a partner? Someone who shares our core beliefs about the world, about what truly matters.
So it's less about agreeing on every little thing and more about those fundamental values.
Exactly. And finally, you have this idea of a matching approach to love itself.
Do you prioritize closeness or independence in a relationship?
How do you define commitment? Finding alignment in these areas is crucial for long-term compatibility, so aligning on those deeper levels of similarity is huge. But this next part of the research really piqued my interest. It's about this idea of equivalence in relationships, and it's not about what you might think at first glance.
It definitely goes beyond those superficial ideas of matching on things like income or social status.
Right.
It's about what we each bring to the table in a relationship, but on a much more meaningful level.
Okay, so break that down for me. What are those less obvious but ultimately more important factors?
Well, according to the text, people actually place a higher value on qualities like kindness, intelligence,
Yeah.
a good sense of humor, those intrinsic traits that make someone a joy to be around.
Okay.
In fact, they cited a study where participants consistently ranked these qualities as more important than material wealth or physical attractiveness.
That's reassuring. But speaking of physical attractiveness, I have to ask about that stranded actresses experiment mentioned in this research.
Right.
It sounds kind of wild.
It's a fascinating study that highlights how even something as seemingly superficial as physical attractiveness can be heavily influenced by other factors.
Okay.
The researchers found that when the actress projected warmth and confidence, smiling, making eye contact, she was perceived as significantly more attractive, even compared to when she was simply dressed to the nines, but lacking that genuine warmth.
So it's more about the energy you bring to the table than anything else.
Exactly. It's about authenticity and that spark of genuine connection. Now, what's even more interesting is that this concept of equivalence isn't just about that initial stage of attraction. It plays a crucial role throughout the entire relationship.
Okay.
It's about maintaining a sense of balance, ensuring that both partners feel like they're contributing and receiving in ways that feel fulfilling.
I can see how constantly being the giver or the taker could create an imbalance in the relationship.
Exactly. It can breed resentment over time.
Right.
The research talks about the importance of mutual investment.
Okay.
It's about both partners feeling like they're equally invested in the relationship's growth and well-being.
Okay. This is all making sense, but it also sounds like it requires a lot of self-awareness and open communication. right? Like, how do we ensure that we're not getting the short end of the stick, so to speak?
You've hit the nail on the head. It all comes down to communication.
Yeah.
Being able to articulate your needs, your
Mm.
expectations, and to do so in a way that feels safe and respectful. And here's where it gets really interesting. The research talks about the power of asking for small favors as a way to strengthen those feelings of connection.
Wait, really? Asking for favors makes someone like you more?
Yeah,
That seems counterintuitive.
it does.
Mm.
Right. But it's rooted in a psychological principle called commitment consistency.
Okay.
Basically, we're wired to want our actions to align with our beliefs. So when we do something nice for someone, even a small favor, it subtly reinforces our positive feelings towards them.
So it's like our brains are trying to justify why we did that nice thing, and we land on, well, I must like this person.
Exactly. There was a fascinating study done at a university in California.
Okay, so we've talked about similarity and equivalence, but this last piece really stood out to me.
Okay.
It's all about respect,
It's crucial.
which, yeah, obviously, makes sense.
Yeah.
But they really dug deep into how respect is like the bedrock of lasting love.
I'd agree with you. This section on respect really resonated with me. It challenges some of those deeply ingrained but ultimately unhelpful beliefs about love.
You mean those narratives we often see where love is portrayed as this battlefield where one person's gain is inherently the other person's loss?
Exactly. This research flips that script entirely. It argues that true love isn't about diminishing your partner to elevate yourself. It's about mutual growth. It's about recognizing that a healthy relationship should nurture the individuality of both partners.
And that's where this idea of ego massaging comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it kind of threw me off at first.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? But don't let the word ego throw you off.
It's not about superficial flattery.
Oh.
It's about genuinely understanding your partner's ideal self, who they aspire to be, and reflecting that back to them in a way that's sincere and meaningful.
So it's less about saying you're amazing and more about those specific heartfelt gestures that show you truly see and appreciate them. Exactly. It's about recognizing what they value in themselves and reflecting that back.
Right.
The text gave the example of Regina praising Larry's knife skills.
Okay.
On the surface, it's a simple compliment, but it goes deeper than that. It reinforces Larry's identity as a skilled chef, something he likely takes pride in.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of times we can be so quick to just brush off compliments,
No, absolutely.
Like, we don't want to seem like we're conceited or whatever.
That's
But
right.
actually, by acknowledging and appreciating those compliments, we're not just being polite.
Yeah.
We're actually affirming the giver's ability to recognize and value those qualities in us.
Exactly.
So it's like a win-win.
It is.
By graciously accepting a compliment, we affirm ourselves and the other person.
Precisely. It creates this beautiful feedback loop of positive reinforcement that strengthens the bond between both individuals.
Wow, this entire deep dive has been so insightful. It really makes you think about these things in a whole new light.
Yeah, does it ever...
So for our listeners out there, remember, the path to building a truly fulfilling, lasting love might just be paved with similarity, equivalence, and a whole lot of respect.
Absolutely.
And on that note, until next time, keep those connections strong.